Has your manager come to you and tapped you on the shoulder and says, the customer's coming in 3 weeks and I need you to get up there and give a presentation? It's about an hour long. Is you ready for that? Or have you heard, and you're like, Gulp, what? I didn't know I had to talk to the customer. I thought I just wrote code. I thought that you didn't say that, but is that what was running through your mind? It's like, what am I supposed to do here now? I got to get up and give a presentation. That was me several years ago on a contract proposal when my manager came to me and said, the Air Force is coming and we're doing a 2-day presentation. And one of those hours is for you. You're going to be in a room with 06 level officers, and this is what you're going to talk about. And white knuckles gripping this chair, I sort of grinned and said, okay, what do I? And then I went to my task leader, my team leader, and I was like, what am I supposed to do? And we worked through it, suffice it to say. And that was also me, a month and a half ago. Our current team leader came and said, we need some people to come and speak to the customer who's up for it. And I still felt a little that I've done a lot of presentations since that first instance I just talked about, but I've done more and more. The more you do it, the better you get at it, but there's still an element of gulp. I need to, let's get ready for this. That's what I want to go over today. I want to give you seven tips to make this a lot more manageable, a lot more able to be dealt with. Okay. And the first one is this: have some kind of deck to present. Okay. Have a slideshow to go over. When I was ramping up to do my for a presentation about a month ago, I had not grabbed the deck. Instead, I kind of had some notes or penciled down, and I kind of dry ran it with my manager and his boss so we could go through the content. And I found myself just like 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, fumbling through stuff. And I was like, I need a deck. I need to get a deck. Do y'all have a standard form deck that we can use? And they said, we sure do. So they gave it to me. It has all the nice company colors on it, the graphics. It's something to lift you up. Okay. It's something to rest at. So I heard it said on other YouTube channel that, our success isn't by rising to the occasion. It's by resting on our processes, by having sufficient controls and processes and structures to settle them. The better you have these tools undergirding you, the easier it is to stand up on something, because now you're not having to pull yourself up by your arms, which are not very strong. Instead, something solid that lifts you up. I don't know why, but the imagery of Back to the Future 2, where Marty goes over the side of the roof and then the DeLorean rises up carrying him, somehow springs to mind when I think about that. And I like that imagery of, if I've got the right tool, if I got the right stuff, then I can spring forth from there. So have a deck to present from. And we all have these assumptions of what goes into the deck, what goes into a slideshow or presentation. You can start putting the stuff in there, your first thoughts. Well, when I get up there, I want to mention these 3 things. So that's 3 bullet points. Write them down. Give it a cute name, whatever your disposition is. Some of you have a more wry sense of humor. Some of you are a bit more deadpan. Either way, put that down. That's fine. You're trying to capture your thoughts and put them on here so that when you're presenting, you reach for that. And it's you. It's not somebody else, how someone else would present it. It's how you would present it. So use that as sort of your drafting board. Now, let's go dig into the second point here. The second tip is to write down all your steps and practice them. Now, what do I mean, write down your steps? Well, I just talked about, I've got this thing I want to cover, and I want to say these 3 things. Well, you could call that 3 of your steps. Write them down in your deck. In this situation, this recent one, in fact, I had one earlier today. I gave a presentation, and the presentation was I had to demonstrate a particular SQL operation that happens under contention when you have 2 different people trying to do the same operation, and how does it work itself out? Well, in that situation, in a literally contentious situation during a contentious presentation, in a contentious situation, it pays to write out every single line you're going to copy and paste, so it's on a script off to the side. I can copy this step, paste it into the terminal window that I'm showing to the customer. I can show the step. Okay, Here's the first step. The code is begin transaction. We're talking about relational databases. Begin transaction. Select blah blah blah. Select star from items. You're writing down the exact commands you're going to type. Now, let's take this full meta and say you can write these steps down, put them in a document, and hand it to the customer and say, here, you can now do what I did in the presentation. I don't know where this idea comes from, this sense of mysticism that I'm going to present something. It's like a stage magic show. I'm going to give you a fantabulous presentation, and I'm not going to show you how I did it. And you're going to be in awe and amazement. That's not what customers want. They want to see something. They want to see your idea or your topic presented and explained, and then they want it served to them on a platter so that they can go replicate it themselves. That's what customers want. They want to be able to do what you're talking about and then repeat it for themselves. They just want it. They want a run through explained by the expert. So that gives them all the information. And then when they can go do the same thing, that empowers them. So they're like, oh, okay, now they get it too. That's how that works. And that's really cool. And I'm going to give you, let's show you the wide angle camera here. You can see we got my Rod Johnson bobblehead doll here on that demonstration. And now that they're out, by the way, we can, I guess I can go mention this. Before you move on, don't forget to check out 12rules.io, and you can get the latest copy of 12 rules for pro coders. It's a actionable advice to advance your career. It's chock full of good stuff in here. But anyway, let me set that aside. Hey, Don, good to see you too. Good morning. All right. Yeah, I did have a customer presentation this morning. I was thinking, like, what is a good topic to present? I'd been so busy with other stuff I hadn't thought ahead, and I was like, I'm giving a customer presentation. Here's all the steps that I'm doing. Why don't I write that down as a topic? It's like, why not? It's like, this is something we must all do. I don't know how good or how bad my mic is, but there's somebody mowing the lawn outside, so I don't know if it gets in here. So I don't know if hearing it or not hearing it's a signal of goodness or badness. But let's continue down this path of 7 tips to follow when giving a customer presentation. The third tip is to capture all your steps into some artifact. Now, that can be a GitHub repository. In this case, my presentation had some code. I did some SQL in a SQL session, but I also had some code. So I actually built a repository. And as part of the presentation, I gave them the link to that. And so all the content I present is in that repository. All my steps that I talked about on the previous step, I said, write down all your steps and practice them. I wrote them all down in an ASCII doc file and put it in the repository. That way, when I give the customer the link, they can go read the steps that I followed. And that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's in fact a great idea. Don says he cannot hear the lawnmower. I'm going to call that a success. I think I got a new mic a few weeks ago, and it's supposed to be really good at getting stuff. It shields stuff that's outside the beam. So anyway, but it doesn't have to be a GitHub repository. It's what fits the bill. So another thing is you can also make a slideshow that you can update somewhere. There's lots of sites like SpeakerDeck, SlideShare. Basically, you export it in some format like a PDF file, and you can upload it there. And some of the charm for me when I go there is like my former teammate, Ollie Dropbomb. He's been updating every one of his slideshows that he gives to the same account, and he has not changed the format in years. He has a consistent style and format so that when you go there, it's a brand. You can see all of his content. You can go back and look at old slideshows. Very nice. And that's one way to upload your presentation. Now, this has to be under the guise of what are the rules for interacting with this customer. If you've signed some kind of NDA with the customer, well, you better not be putting your content into public. So make sure you check in with your program management team that you're following the proper controls on that front. But another place is you can write up all your notes, your steps, whatever, and publish them somewhere in social media. Now, that's kind of the last place I would go to, but it depends on what kind of customer we're talking here. I want to make this wide and make you just expand your thinking to realize, well, I could post this either on LinkedIn or I could post it on X. Now, if I don't want anybody to see it 4 hours from now, I'm going to post it on Facebook, right? are the meta lawyers about to come after me and shut me down? I hope not. Um, but step 3 is to just go capture all those steps where, your first thought may be, I'm going to open up a notepad and just write down the steps for me, but you can go ahead and copy and paste them and put them into something a little more sustainable, because I think you'll find over time it becomes handy to go back and get some of your notes from a previous presentation. What if your presentation is a massive success and they come back to you and they say, we want you to come back and give another presentation? Well, I like to know, what did I say last time? Sometimes it's handy to tap in to stuff. Now, step 4, let's change up the angle here. Let's go back to here. Let's go to the, so for step 4 is take plenty of breaks where the customer can pose questions or ask for clarification. And I'm not talking about, in a 30-minute meeting or a 1-hour meeting, everybody get up and go get a cup of coffee kind of break. I'm just like, pause your presentation every few slides and check, and see, does somebody have their hand up, or each platform's a little different. What I like, we use internally, we'll get presentations through Google Meet. Is it Meet or Meetup? Google Meet. And somebody can click this button that says raise hand. It's this little emoji pops up, but it makes a special ding. So if you're the one presenting, you hear that and you can decide, okay, I'm going to finish the sentence or this paragraph, and then I'm going to go say, well, did somebody have a question? That's a very nice interactive means. My call this morning was on Zoom and I heard no such ding happen. So I deliberately paused at a certain point and looked in the chat channel and the Q&A, and I saw somebody had asked a question. And it was somebody that I believe had missed my previous session because their question was pertinent to what we had talked about previously. So I went and did a very quick recap to answer that person's question so they could catch up and then better follow along. Sometimes people just want to, they have questions of clarification. Like maybe you said something and it's something you've been dealing with for months, but it's the first time they've heard about it. So it may have flown right by them. So wait a minute, could you say that again? Could you repeat that? I didn't quite get that, or something. Okay, well, let me go back and restate it. And sometimes instead of just using the same words, try to restate it from another angle. And then it makes sense after that to say, well, does that answer your question? Did I get that for you? And sometimes they'll say yay, or sometimes they'll say nay. And so you can try again. This is the kind of stuff that makes for a good meeting. It turns instead of a customer presentation being a lecture, like a university lecture where somebody's going to stand up there and just flip slides and recite information and listen for nothing, it makes it more interactive and it lets you build that relationship with your customer. Now, tip number 5 is what I was starting to allude to, is don't just blast through everything. We call that a lecture. And most notably, I call that like a freshman level lecture. Like I don't want to say we've all, if you've been to college, some of those freshman classes you go to, you're in a lecture hall with 300 students. In that context, they're not going to take questions, because if they took 30-second question from half the room, there'd be no time for the lecture. So in those situations, they just can't take questions. But if you're in a meeting with 10 people, the dynamics are different. So in that case, we talk about letting people pose questions and ask for clarification. But another piece of that is something I learned years ago was, okay, I've got this topic, I'm going to talk about it, and I've got some slides. Well, it's handy to say, in the next few slides, we're going to talk about how to do a select for update operation. And then you go to the slides and you talk about it. And after those slides, you say, now that part, we talked about select for update. Now we're going to talk about so-and-so. And that way you're kind of hanging a hat on, hey, this is important, this thing I talked about. And yes, to answer your pending question, I was giving a presentation about what select for update is. I'm not going to tell you about it. You can go read all you want about it, but that was the topic. But it helps it kind of helps set their anticipation for what's coming. So they're not totally, befuddled at each flip of the slide. So I said, this is what I'm going to talk about. Now we're going to talk about it. And afterwards, you're kind of giving a quick recap, and you're flowing it into, well, we covered this. Why is it relevant to that? What's this got to do with that? Well, This empowers us to avoid that problem. A little sip here. So what this does is this helps bridge the topic. It kind of makes it where I'm not just reciting facts somebody could pick up. If somebody goes reads 2 or 3 pages of reference documentation, maybe they could glean everything I'm talking about. But if I start sewing it together and linking the parts together, then it builds the content. Oh, okay. Now I get why that's important. It didn't really say that in the documentation. I didn't realize that. Or I would have had to read 3 times as many bits of documentation to gather the point. So here you're grabbing onto the critical bits and chaining them together. And this is kind of what the point of a customer meeting is. You're trying to help communicate a specific body of knowledge in that. And so that's why it's handy to not just blast through everything. Okay. I'm checking on my notes here. All right. Now, the sixth tip I want to go to is something that I got to break it to you is going to happen. Okay. What if somebody asks you the question and you don't know what the answer is? How do you deal with that? Here's the thing. It's okay to say, I don't know the answer to that. That was like, I don't know, that was one of the weirdest realizations for me in my career. Now, that was years ago that I discovered that, but it's like, I part of what made me sweat and be nervous and all tense for going into these presentations was, what if they ask me a question I don't know the answer to it? What am I going to do? Do I need to study up so that I will know the answer to everything? Let me break it to you. Someone is going to ask a question and you will not know the answer to it. There's no way to know everything that's possibly going to be asked. Okay. So you need to take this assumption that you must have all the answers and just set it aside. It's not like that. People will have everyone's going to have their own assumptions, their own ideas, their own perspectives on what stuff is doing. And so they're going to ask a question that's angled towards that. And it may be totally relevant for what you're talking about. It may be totally irrelevant. It kind of doesn't matter. But when they ask you a question and you don't know the answer, you can say, I don't know the answer to that, but I can follow up on that after this meeting. You can sit there and say, I'm going to try to go find the answer to that. And actually right now I do. Somebody asked me a question earlier today. I didn't know the answer to it. So my manager happened to be in the call and I said, well, I don't know if Doug has, I don't want to flub. I didn't know if he had the answer to it or not, but I basically signaled, we'll go find the answer. And so that's part of what I'm doing right now. I'm doing the research. That's how we do that, is we go say, I'm going to try to present the information that I have. I'm going to present the context that I'm aware of, why this is, how this works for you, what use case this solves. And if you're going to pose a question, I'm going to do the best to answer it. And I'm going to try to tell you how. Sometimes people ask me a question. I say, well, I think this is the answer, but I'm not totally certain about that. So I can go double check that after the meeting. That's another type of answer. There may be other things that you do know the answer to. Well, just give them the answer. But it's always okay to give somebody your confidence in that answer as part of that criteria so they can assess it. Because I mean, that's all we're doing, is we're having a conversation with the customer and trying to share this type of stuff with them. Okay, let me see. So what I want to tackle is the 7th tip when giving customer presentation. Be genuine and sincere. Let me show you the wide angle again. I kind of like this wide angle here. You can see my nice Death Star or Darth Vader rig with Rod Johnson. Okay, and my nice decorative cockroach DB water bottle. Try to answer stuff to the best of your ability. I mean, that's the point. You're there because you have a certain piece of knowledge that the customer does not have. um, you you are theoretically you're the expert in this field. You're the one working on this particular topic, and so they're tapping you for your awareness that the surrounding people don't have. Okay, so try to answer stuff to the best of your ability, but don't worry if you make a mistake or if you flub something. It's okay to say, that answer I just gave you, based on what you just asked me, I realized was incorrect. That's all it takes. It's we all make mistakes. We sometimes we type commands, and one of my things I lean into. I used it once at a conference talk, and I found it was kind of funny to the audience. And anytime that I'm typing something, whether I'm typing a SQL statement or writing a line of code, and I don't realize I just put a bug in it, I run it and the statement fails, or it won't compile. Well, I sit there and say, well, proof that this is a live demo. Because I've actually seen, or I've heard of presentations where they had canned recorded stuff playing, and they use that to sneak stuff by people. Not any contracts I worked on, but I'd heard about them in other ones. And it's like, if I was if I had this baked and scripted and canned and polished to perfection, it would have worked effortlessly. The fact that I made a mistake is illustrative that I just did this live. And sometimes people they realize, oh, that's cool. That's nice. And it's not to show off. It's just to say, look, this is how I'm going to demonstrate it. This is a simple enough concept that I can type a handful of SQL statements and a couple shells and demonstrate this characteristic. And you can say, oh, okay, now I get the point of that. That's just, you're putting it out there. I'm trying to share one specific bit of narrative, one thing. And here's the reason this is beneficial to you. Here's how this solves one particular problem. And one thing I like to do in any customer meeting is give them more content. So today was the second meeting we'd had with this particular customer. So I was able to allude to, well, the last time, as just a quick recap in case you missed it, we covered this, but today we're going to cover that. I don't go into what we covered last time because you can go find the recording for that. Today we're going to cover this. This is what we're covering today. Is a consequence of last, so it builds on it. And then I threw a nugget out of what we might be able to cover in a future session if you want us to come back, would be on this topic. Here's something, this helps us out, that we can cover another area that's an even better tactic to help you out on that front. And a lot of times customers are like, well, that sounds cool. Why not let's do that. A lot of times customers are open to, let's have additional meetings. Let's build the relationship. Let's grow that. I heard somebody say on a podcast, and it's the first time I've ever heard anybody say this, is that there's this kind of cliche expression of, well, business is business. It's not personal. It's just business. What I heard on the podcast was somebody said, no, all business is personal. If you're working with a true salesman, not somebody who's trying to snooker you on a deal, but somebody who understands the product and is trying to resolve what you need to get done, and they're familiar with the product, this is what true salesmanship is supposed to be. They're supposed to work with you in a personable nature to solve your problem. And the point is they know this particular product very well. That's personal. And so when we go into customer meetings, I would hope that it could be in a context of, we're trying to work together. Yes, we're selling you a product, we're selling you services, but the point is these services are supposed to serve you. That's why we call them services. They're supposed to be to your benefit. So you communicate what you need, and we communicate how this solves your problems. That's through a personable connection, through building a relationship. And to me, that's a positive thing. So, so when you're giving a presentation to a customer, just try to be genuine and sincere and try to be yourself. And again, do the best that you can, but it's okay to say, well, I've been able to indicate, hey, in this thing, I'd like to talk about this. Well, I don't know the answer to that. I'm a little new to the product, so I'm not familiar with that area. But after the meeting, I'm going to go consult with somebody that I know is more seasoned expert, and I'll try to get a more detailed answer to that. And the outcome of that may be yet another presentation to give to the customer, another way to share the information that you found for them. Because, does that not I don't know. It does for me. It makes me gives me a warm feeling to be able to go have found a solution to somebody's answer and bring it back to them and show, here, this serves you, this benefits you. Here's how this works. And all we're talking about is, I'm going to get this answer for you. This serves your solution, and you will fairly compensate me for that. And to me, that's a good, honest, above board relationship to build with customers. And we're all customers, whether we're customers to somebody else or somebody else is a customer to us. And so, to make that part of our daily lives, I think is fantastic. I do want to remind you, if you want to catch it, you can catch the audio version of this on the replay. So you may be listening to it right now through the audio, but if you're watching through Twitter, LinkedIn, Rumble, YouTube, what have you, you can also catch the audio version of this podcast. Just go to podcast.procoder.io and subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform. I do need to let you know that the Google podcast platform is either about to go down or it's already gone down. So you can come to YouTube to catch it there, to catch the podcast, or go subscribe on, we publish it to all kinds of places like Apple Podcasts, so on and so forth. So check it out there. And I want to thank you for tuning in today's episode of the Pro Coder Show. Just remember to go out there and be professional.
This episode is over, but your code writing journey continues. Visit procoder.io to find links and resources to help you become a pro coder.